welcome, or if you'd like to welcome me, that's fine too. It's both ways, right? But Maggie and I are delighted to be here with you in worship today, and I'm very pleased to be with a team of Cheryl and Sandy and Nick, each of us taking turns in leading Sunday worship. And anyone I may not have met, my name's Allan Saunders, and as I say, very pleased to be with you here. Did you notice something outside?
I noticed something missing.
Yeah. There's noticed something missing, and by the way, we were thinking we might have some baptisms right after this. But I think it was Allan here that you were assuming that some of us had been baptized in the mud and the muck already. So, but if that's the case, you're in the right place too. So do come and join in our time of worship today. There's one of the announcements is about your chaplain. And as someone who had the honor of being part of a team where Tammy was part of our team, I just want to say how fortunate this congregation is that Tammy Wendell is your chaplain. So I don't know how often I can mention that. It is a fortunate day for this congregation, and that decision is very good. So we want to make sure that you know that one of the announcements is everybody knows March 17th. What's happening on March 17th?
St.
Patrick's Day, yes. What next? Right. So it's an easy way to remember. Listen, did you want to say something on that?
Yes, thank you, Allan. As required, this is the second official announcement that our AGM will be held next Sunday, immediately following service. And in that regard, everyone should have received by now an electronic copy of the AGM report. If you don't have a computer, you can't make a copy of yourself. I do have a dozen or so hard copies here for those of us who really can't read it electronically. So if you would like a copy and you don't have it, please email or phone the office, and Cheryl, the other Cheryl, will get you a copy, an electronic copy of it immediately. There will be a couple of reports that we will read at the AGM, but we don't expect to read any reports there, so please be advised of what all the reports are from the committees. Okay, so just see me afterwards if you need a printed copy. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Before we go on with further announcements, we have celebrations perhaps. Is there a celebration to be? Yes, Gary.
I had a birthday yesterday.
A birthday yesterday. Oh, congratulations. Happy birthday to you. 39.
And
holy, yeah. Any other celebrations to be noted today?
I'm celebrating after close to a year. They're finally getting my knee surgery done.
Oh, that's cause for celebration too, for sure.
Best of luck.
Very good to hear. Any others we want to know? Well, we'll include yours with the birthday celebration. How's that?
Okay.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you. And many more.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'd like to invite Pat to come forward to share about an announcement. There are printed announcements available just outside the doorway here, so there's more information there for you as well.
Yes, so I'm Dr. Pat, and it's my privilege to offer a talk on the medical aspects of the crucifixion on Saturday the 23rd at 2 p.m. I chose that because I thought people would be here to set up the chair so they could stay and listen to my talk. So the four evangelists, all they said in the Gospels are, they led him away and crucified him. And they said no more because they had no need. In that time, everyone knew about the death on the cross and crucifixion. So I gave this presentation once before, and I gave my little spiel like I'm doing now ahead of time. And somebody came up from the crowd afterwards and said, well, all the Gospels say is they crucified him. What have you got to say? So I said, you've got to come and listen. Now, the idea is not to shock, not to upset anybody, but to inform and to make the readings of Holy Week more meaningful for us. So then that we can truly be be joyful at Easter when he rose again from the dead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pat. And certainly we acknowledge that for some it may be difficult, some of what they hear, some of what they see, but to underline the purpose is to gain a deeper appreciation of the events of Holy Week, and especially Good Friday. Thank you. Any further announcements to be highlighted? And there are the pages that you can pick up in the hallway there as well. So our tradition is to make this acknowledgement that Central Saanich United Church is located on the traditional territories of the Saanich peoples and our neighbors with the Sartlip and the Saywoot peoples, on whose traditional territories we live and learn, we play and work. And we acknowledge further that the historical relationship to the land and territories of these people continue to this day. Friends, throughout the season of Lent this year, we are following a different day of Holy Week each Sunday. And this particular Sunday is Maundy Thursday, the day before the crucifixion, the day before Good Friday. And Maundy means commandment. And so as you hear the readings and so forth, be listening for where is that commandment? What is the commandment Jesus gives on Maundy Thursday? The service will be a little different than a typical service here. We're going to have a series of readings and reflections, and we'll hear a bit more about that as we go along. But I want to say up front my appreciation for the flexibility of this congregation in following a path in worship a little different from what we normally would do. In our invitation to worship, our call to worship, which follows, following that we have the lighting of the Christ candle. As we remember, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has never overcome it. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm rushing you. Have a seat. Sorry, folks, how many of you are morning people? Hands up. Did you notice my hand didn't go up? Normally we have this hour difference, so bear with me. So we've just noted that it's Maundy Thursday, and besides those 7 readings, there are going to be 7 verses that we sing, or portions of hymns that we sing. And so we have 2 of them that Michael and I want to make sure we've gone over with you as a congregation so that you're prepared for the singing of them. The first one is from Voices United 132, and it's by Sidney Carter. Some of you know Lord of the Dance. I Dance in the Morning, Sidney Carter. So here's another piece by him, and it's quite a simple tune. I think you'll pick it up well. But because we're going through events in the Holy Week itself, it isn't sung very often on a regular Sunday. Michael. One more time?
Yeah. Bitter was the night, thought God would grow forever. Bitter was the night, before the break of day.
Now, the next hymn is just 2 on in Voices United. It's number 134. And I've always found the words to this hymn very profound, the music not quite so. And so this is the first time in history that a new tune is going to be sung this day. Because I said to Michael, it's really powerful words, but can you find an alternative tune? I said, well, there's this one, there's that one, or I just composed this one. so we're going to be singing Michael's composition. And let me tell you, that's important enough, right? But let me tell you why it's important to me. The words are powerful, but also I knew the person who wrote them. The person was a United Church minister. She ministered in a congregation. She was a chaplain, a corrections chaplain. And she also was the editor of a national worship resource in the United Church of Canada. And her name is Sylvia Dunstan. And there's about 40 hymns that she composed the lyrics for. And Sylvia composed this in 1992. And it was about this time of the year, the next year, she was diagnosed with liver cancer. 4 months later, she died, age 38.
Oh my.
And we're saddened by such a early passing, but we're also grateful for what she has left to us, the gift of her writings. She was a fine liturgy leader, led liturgy and national conference in the United Church, but she also was a fine composer of hymn lyrics. And so we're going to sing 2 verses, not now, but in the service. We'll sing one at one point, and there's a break, and then we'll sing the other verse. So we'll become familiar with the wonderful new melody we're going to hear. In the service. And so now, as we commence our time of that worship, we do so by lighting the Christ candle. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Thanks be to God. Our call to worship is responsive. Your parts are in the yellow, I believe. We are gathered in the presence of God, who asks us to choose.
Between life and death, between blessings and curse.
We are gathered like the people of the Gospels,
who were challenged to choose the way of life.
Like them, we often follow the ways of death.
Yet, like them, we have the freedom each day to begin anew by the grace of God.
By our presence here, we are saying that we choose life.
Let us praise the God of love and life who has called us to this place.
Let us join in prayer. Gracious God, this day we recall the events that occurred the day before Jesus died. As we do so, give us the wisdom of your Spirit, that we might appreciate the depth and breadth of Christ's love shown here. Bless this time as we read the gospel record and as we reflect upon its significance for our own lives and for this our world. We ask in Christ's name. Amen. In those days, there was no pavement, and so whenever people went anywhere in their sandal feet, they collected all sorts of dust from the walk. And the custom was that when you went to the door of someone, you were invited to be at their home. There would be a servant who had the task of washing your feet. But that wasn't exactly how it happened on the Maundy Thursday with Jesus and his disciples. Latin word for darkness. And in various churches of all types of denominations, on Maundy Thursday they hold a Tenebrae service. And these services can vary somewhat, but a core part of the service is 7 readings of events that happened on Maundy Thursday. And there is a lighting of 7 candles. And with each of the readings, one of the candles is put out as they reflect upon the growing darkness of the events of that day. And so today we're going to follow that practice. And I give thanks to our readers, for Wilda and Tammy for taking part in this. And after the reading, a candle is put out, and then there's 1 or 2 verses of hymn sung. Are people, as you're seated, are you able to see the words on the screen there? I would suggest we all just remain seated through all 7 of these, because it's a time, it's more time for pondering and reflecting, a quiet, reflective time. And invite you just to remain seated as we go through this Tenebrae liturgy. And so the introduction, or I should say, the lighting of the 7 candles. The introduction. Meeting with friends one final time. In life as he knew it, the thought of things presently to come weighing heavily on his heart. So now it comes to this, leave-taking. What to say? What to do? So much to say. So much to do. Yet all poured out in these simple words and actions. A sign with water and a towel, a fervent prayer, a transforming meal, and more. All recalled by followers down through the centuries and around the world.
From John, Jesus washes his disciples' feet. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to God. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed how perfect this love was. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured the water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Rabbi, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part of me." "Then, Rabbi," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well."
The second reading comes to us from John 15, verses 12 through 17. "My commandment is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down their lives for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from God, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, God will give you. This is my commandment: love each other."
This reading is from Matthew. Jesus prays in Gethsemane. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane And he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "God, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "God, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the chosen one is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer."
the betrayal and arrest from Matthew 26, verses 47 through 56. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs sent from the chief priest and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him. Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus replied, "Do what you came for, friend." Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him, "for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on God to provide at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scripture be fulfilled that say it must happen this way?" In that hour, Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I leading a rebellion that you've come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat at the temple courts teaching, and you didn't arrest me there. But this was all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled.
A reading from Matthew. Peter denies Jesus. Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. "You also were with Jesus of Galilee," she said. But he denied it before them all. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, "This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth." He denied it again with an oath, "I don't know what you mean." After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, "Surely you are one of them. Your accent gives you away." Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, "I don't know the man." Immediately a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly.
Matthew 17:15 through 23, Jesus before Pilate. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with this innocent man, for I've suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priest and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to ask Jesus be executed. "So which of the two do you want me to release?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then when Jesus who is called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify! Crucify him!" "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him! Crucify him!"
Last reading is from Matthew 27, verses 27 to 31. The soldiers mock Jesus. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. Then they knelt in front of him and mocked him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him.
hopefully you all can see it. There is a picture of the Church of St. Peter in Gallicantu. This is one of the most striking churches in all of Jerusalem. It's located on a steep cliff on the eastern side, the slope of Mount Zion. And all the way back to 333 AD, there are reports, accounts by pilgrims saying that this is a particular site. It's the site of the house of the high priest Caiaphas and his courtyard. And therefore, if that is so, it's also the site where Jesus was taken after he was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane and brought before the high priest. And furthermore, it is the site where Peter denied Jesus the 3 times. The Church of St. Peter in Gallicantu. And if you go there today, you'll find outside in the church's courtyard, you'll find a statue. And there's Peter, there's one of the servant girls, there's a Roman soldier, and so forth. And on the top, there is the rooster, the mocking rooster. Indeed, there's a rooster, a golden rooster, on the very top of the dome of this church. Gallicantu means cock crow. And so it's a place where pilgrims will go and we'll just stay there for a moment. And they go to reflect about the story of Peter, about his denial. And when you go inside, you see this marvelous sanctuary and other rooms with wonderful depictions, several of them of Peter. But you know, they don't show only his moment of denial. They also show his remorse, his reconciliation as well. His remorse was instant. You heard it in the reading just now. The moment the cock crows, what happens? He goes away and he weeps bitterly. And it doesn't stop there though, does it? Soon the risen Christ is there, saying to him, Peter, do you love me? And he asks the question 3 times, a threefold forgiveness for the threefold denial. A full reconciliation, and by the grace of Christ, then Peter picks himself up and he becomes one of the dynamic folk in that newborn church following the resurrection. So it's a good story to remember about Peter, not just his denial, but the rest of it as well. Now, many pilgrims go to this site, and one of the reasons is the church. It's what lies underneath the church. The next slide, it shows we have a model, remembering that this would be the site where Jesus had been bound in Gethsemane and he was brought before the high priest Caiaphas. And what they find is not only the church, what lies beneath it. And the first time you realize that there's something beneath it, maybe when you see this. You're still on the lower level of the church, but there's this opening going down to something. And it's an opening going down to a dungeon. It's an opening going down to where people believe this is where Jesus spent that night after his arrest and before he was led off for crucifixion. In Jesus' time, that was it. That was the only way you got in or out. It was on a rope harness. The prisoner was lowered down. By a rope harness, you were raised. And in his case, sent off eventually to crucifixion. Nowadays there are stairs, so pilgrims will come and groups will gather, and you'll see here's one group, here's another, who gather and find it a very meaningful time to be in this dungeon, the prison of Jesus, the night before he dies. We're just going to hold the slide there because I need to share with you something I experienced a few years ago. I was invited to take part in a pilgrimage going to the Holy Land. It would be a group of 20 ministers along with their leader and a chaplain. And there was one Canadian in the group. There were 2 other Caucasians. Everyone else was African American from all over the United States, including Alaska. This pilgrimage was being organized by a black seminary in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia. And on our 2-week pilgrimage, we did a lot of sharing with one another, got to know one another, and I got to have a deep appreciation for the faith of these people. A faith that saw them through all sorts of trials and tribulations in their lives, a number of which were simply because of the color of their skin. So it was near the end of our 2 weeks together that we finally arrived in Galligantu. Now, I have to tell you that there were many remarkable moments going on a pilgrimage through the Holy Land with these particular pilgrims I was with. And now I was going to experience one of the biggest surprises of them all. Because, you see, the moment that we stepped in to that dungeon, Christ's prison cell, the very moment we stepped in, there was this eruption of a huge noise, a great sound. And it was all my friends had broken into singing. They were singing spirituals, one after another. It wasn't planned, it wasn't organized, it was just very spontaneous, like a spontaneous combustion. Having stepped into that dungeon had evoked something very powerful and deep within them. And so they sang. They sang. And there were other groups that were waiting their turn to get in and see Christ's prison. But you know, they weren't going to budge. My friends, they were going to stay there and sing just as long as they thought that was necessary. And their singing, it reverberated off the bedrock walls and ceiling and floor. I was totally surrounded by this fantastic sound. What were they singing? Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. What's the next line?
Glory.
Oh, there's another one.
A
No.
long way from home.
A long way from home. A long way from home. They sang, "Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. Nobody knows but Jesus. Why should I feel discouraged? God's eye is on the sparrow, and I know God watches me." I've been thinking, you and I might sing and express our gratitude for those good times that come into our lives when we know that we have been blessed. That's not what they were singing about that day. They were singing about expressing gratitude during the bad days.